Another game without Tua, another game without passing offense, another loss for our Miami Dolphins. How are we doing, you guys? It is Ben Morgan of the Fins Up Network as our Miami Dolphins fall on Sunday to the Indianapolis Colts by a score of 16-10. And quite honestly, a game that I feel like we should have won going into today. I would say that I personally think that we needed to win this game. It's a little early to be calling must wins, but just the way the season has played out and really wanting to go 500, go 2-2 while Tua was out. And obviously now with him coming back in week 8, we're going to end up going 1-3 while Tua was in concussion protocol on IR. Simply enough, we just cannot put an offense together, especially a passing offense together, when it's not Tua at quarterback. And stop me there if I'm a broken record, because I feel like for all 3 of these losses since Tua's been out, we've basically been saying the same thing. Now, the good news is, yes, next week, week 8 against the Cardinals, Tua's going to be back. And hopefully we see some changes. Obviously, there's a chance for some rust in there as well. We're going to we got a lot to cover yet in week 7 before we get to week 8. We'll get to our full recap here in just a second. Before we jump into things, though, I want to hear from you. Your thoughts on this loss, your thoughts on the offense. I'm going to talk about the defense and one of these bright spots here at the end. Your thoughts on the entire organization right now. Go ahead, drop them in the comments. If you haven't gotten subscribed yet, hopefully make my day a little bit better, and please do that. But in my opinion, Dolphins fans, the biggest thing that cost us today were those 2 crucial fumbles on the ground, which is quite honestly even more painful considering the best thing that we had going for us offensively was essentially the thing that ended up costing us the game. Because I talked about those 2 fumbles. The first one, Raheem Mostert, typically pretty solid with the ball. We're up 10-3 early third quarter. Mostert takes a carry to the 47, so we're driving. We're nearly at midfield. Ends up fumbling. The Colts get a nice return out of it. They take it to the 28. They score 4 plays afterwards. Huge momentum shift. The score is tied at 10 from there. Second fumble, Alec, Ingold, a guy that doesn't get a lot of touches. Yeah, he had a nice catch down the sideline earlier in the game. We give him 1 carry, and it doesn't go well. 10-10 late in the third. We're down all the way to the 13 where we got a lot of momentum. It looks like a touchdown could potentially happen at this point in time. Worst case scenario, we kick a field goal. We're up 13-10. Mike McDaniel, who I thought called a decent game today, 1st and 10 fullback dive. A 1st and 10 fullback dive, which essentially gets stuffed. Alec Ingold loses yards on the carry. He loses the ball. It's recovered by Indianapolis. You've got, I don't want to say the entire playbook from the 13-yard line, but you don't have to get that crazy. You don't have to try to catch him off guard at that point in time, the way that drive was going, the way we were running the ball in general. We'll get to that here in a second. A 1st and 10 fullback dive. Like I said, I liked McDaniel's strategy, his scheme coming into the day. That one is hard to defend. So even though Indianapolis doesn't capitalize on that turnover, it essentially killed our best chance at points for the remainder of the game. Now, we didn't look good offensively throughout the game. I'll put it that way. But honestly, we did enough to be in position to win that game. Like I said, we should have won that game. But when you mix in untimely turnovers, that's too much to overcome with how stagnant our passing offense is. Because in what's become a theme this year for the Miami Dolphins, unfortunately, Tyler Huntley gets injured in the third quarter. He's unable to return. Like I said, he goes down in the third quarter. He finishes just 7 of 13, only 87 passing yards. He did have a touchdown pass to Jonnu Smith, which we'll talk about here in a second. Tim Boyle comes in. He essentially puts up the same stat line, 8 of 13, 74 yards, regardless of who was at quarterback for the Dolphins. The Colts held the passing game under wraps. Tyreek Hill, Jaylen, Waddle. If you watched it, you didn't see much of them. Combined for 2 catches for 19 yards. Both of those catches coming late. Neither of them had a single target in the first half. We talked about it in the preview videos. We know we're going to run the ball. We know we're not going to be super successful passing the ball without Tua Tagovailoa. It proved to be even harder. It proved to be even worse. There was nothing going on whatsoever downfield for the Dolphins. If that first second read wasn't there for Huntley, he tucked and ran, which was fairly smart. It actually worked in some situations, but when you have Tyreek Hill, when you have Jaylen Waddle, you find ways to manufacture touches. You find ways to get them the ball on those early mesh routes, crossing routes. Let them create after the catch. Hell, Marcus Mariota, another backup, came in today for Washington. It's on right now. What, they've got like 30-some points already? Can't see that far. They're playing with their backup. I get it's against the Panthers, but they're doing okay. Other teams have done it. It's hard to watch right now, Dolphins fans. The only thing we really found success with in that passing game was targeting Jonnu Smith, which is actually kind of wild to say because as Dolphins fans, we've grown used to the tight end being ignored in the passing game. We didn't throw a single touchdown to a tight end all of last year. It took us to week 7 this year to do it with Jonnu catching his. Caught all 7 of his targets, 96 yards, the touchdown. And we actually talked about Jonnu this offseason, how he's not Kittle, he's not Kelsey, but he's the type of tight end that you can get the ball to in space. Hell, you can throw a tight end screen to, and he's good enough after the catch. He's actually really good after the catch to the point where you're comfortable calling those plays. And we saw it work twice today. It worked on the tight end screen for the touchdown, and then we did another tight end screen later in the game, and that one picked up double-digit yards as well. So it's going to be interesting to see if Jonnu's targets continue next week when Tua does return, but I'm really assuming that we'll try to make an effort, but we're going to look to ramp up Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle as we look for them to bounce back in this offense, this passing game in general to bounce back. All right, we talked about that run game. That's where Miami did have some success today outside of those 2 fumbles. 40 carries, music to a lot of Dolphins fans' ears that wanted running back touches today. 188 yards on those 40 carries, 4.7 yards per carry. Mixed very well also. Achane, who I can't help it, he's so small, and with that big helmet on, he looked like he came from like a video game where aliens play football. I know that's not nice to say, but it just looked kind of comical. He went for 77. Raheem Mostert goes for 50. Jaylen Wright goes for 33. So a nice mix, quite honestly. I think we could have gotten even a little bit more Jaylen Wright, but when you have that mix, when you're getting each one of those guys going, someone's likely going to kind of be the odd man out. But what I really liked with the running game was how we were doing it. We weren't doing the eye candy, the crazy motion, the crazy, the Tua play where he fakes one way and he flicks it out the other way. We're flicking it back 6 yards before we're even considering going forward. We weren't doing anything like that. We were lining up and straight running it forward with a purpose. And the other thing that I really liked, those halfback toss plays. We saw them early in Mike McDaniel's tenure as the head coach. We hadn't seen them a lot recently. And they're not necessarily your traditional halfback toss where it's always going out wide. It's the toss plays that we see the 49ers run where you toss it to the running back. He puts his foot in the ground and he's still taking it up in between the tackles. I love that play. The run game is another thing that I want to see us stay committed to next week when Tua's back. But in regards to today, simply the only real positive on offense outside of Jonnu Smith. Let's talk a little bit about that defense because color me impressed right now with Anthony Weaver and what he's getting done and what he's getting out of these guys. You hold the Colts to 16 points. I know they're not an offensive juggernaut, but with Anthony Richardson, you could put up 16, you could put up 36. It's just kind of how that day's going to go. But Richardson goes just 10 of 24. We held him under 50% completion, just 129 yards through the air. Now, we did give up 155 on the ground, but keep in mind, 56 of those came from Richardson on a mix of 14 designed runs or scramble. So freeze for Anthony Richardson in order to get that 56 yards. But look at the amount of positives from this defense today. You got Zach Sealer recovering the fumble on the botch snap early. You allowed just 3 points, 1 field goal in the first half. Also in the first half, I keep notes throughout the game. There was really only 2 meaningful gains that we gave up in that first half. One was a 3rd and 10 scramble by Richardson. The other was the 33-yard reception to Michael Pittman, which put him in field goal range for that 3 points in the first half. But we're mixing up the blitzes. You saw Kohu blitz. You saw Poyer blitz. You saw Jalen Ramsey blitz. Hell, Jalen Ramsey had 2 quarterback hits. He should have had at least 1 sack, maybe even a forced fumble on that. Anthony Richardson is just another size of a human being. Most any other quarterback, Jalen Ramsey's taken him down. But at the end of the day, this Dolphins defense under Anthony Weaver, doing its job, despite the offense really not giving them any room for error. Now, I'll say towards the end of the game, we wore down a little bit. You saw some missed tackles. You saw some more yards giving up on the ground to Sermon Goodson, to Anthony Richardson. But even at that point in time, you held the Colts to the 2 field goals. You kept it a 1-score game for your offense. I keep waiting, and even today, I kept waiting for that defense just to give up at some point in time, just kind of out of frustration. It's like, okay, offense, at some point in time, you got to do something. You got to bail us out. We're continuing to get you the ball back without giving points up. Do something with it. But Anthony Weaver has this defense playing good, all things considered. I'm hoping they can continue to build off this momentum that they have, and maybe the offense can actually start sparking a few things up here as well once Tua returns. I got a couple of other game notes today as well. Julian Hill with just a brutal missed block on that Leatu Latu sack on the drive after the Colts tied it up. That's one of those plays where you have the tight end coming across to get that edge rusher. And it's, in a sense, it's going to give your quarterback a little bit extra time as well, because you're doubling some of the other alignment. That's your shot play. We can't even take a shot play if Leatu Latu ends up beating Julian Hill's block, which he ended up doing. Special teams remains a concern. Jason Sanders doinked a potential game-tying field goal late, which wasn't really made any easier as well. It was a pretty high snap, so we're already kind of feeling that loss of Blake Ferguson being out as well. Very end of the game, Tim Boyle throwing the ball to absolutely no one and out of bounds on our last offensive play is, once again, inexcusable. I suppose you could say that the lack of reps, the lack of practice time just in general, but put the ball in play, give someone a chance. And then lastly, just more penalties today as well. What do we got? 6 penalties on the day, which is actually, I should have looked it up, probably a little bit better than usual, but it's the timing. The timing of these penalties is always so brutal. You got Jonnu Smith lining up offsides. You got Liam Eichenberg actually making a block, but then the hand goes up and gets into the guy's face for a face mask call. We have holding calls. We have illegal formation calls. We're consistently wiping out big plays. And then these games without Tua, it's game-changing plays. It's plays that could potentially lead to scores. If you could wipe out some of those hands to the face calls, some of those holding calls, we probably have more than 10 points in this game. And then maybe we're not blaming the 2 fumbles like we are in this game, because really, like I said earlier, that's kind of what really boils down and probably cost us this game. But if you don't have some of those penalties, those turnovers probably aren't as big of a factor as well. We've seen teams lose turnover battles in the NFL and still come back and win those games. But when you got to play as flawlessly as we do right now, it just ain't going to end up working out. No game ball today because of having a loss. My honorable mention would just be Anthony Weaver. I like what he's doing with this defense. But Dolphins fans, we talked about week 8, so that's what we are going to be doing next. We'll be back with our typical preview videos as we, get to Tagovailoa back, as all reports, as we've been saying all along, should be back here week 8 at home against the Arizona Cardinals. So, hey, one more week to kind of get through. Never sleep well on these nights with the Dolphins losses, but do what you can. Kind of bury this one, and hopefully we can kind of hit a little bit of a reset button here week 8 against the Arizona Cardinals. But we will wrap it right there for today, Miami Dolphins fans. Like I said, drop your thoughts from the game in the comments. We'll carry on the conversation there. And until next week, Dolphins fans, fins up.